In the book, The Art of War, Chinese General Sun Tzu wrote that in order to defeat an enemy, you must first study and learn their warfare tactics, and then develop your own counter strategies to overcome those warfare tactics. Likewise, we as Black people must learn the warfare tactics that white oppressive forces presently deploys for covertly continuing their subjugation of us. Sun Tzu also wrote that if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the results of 100 battles. Our core problem in reference to that quote is that we don't actually know ourselves nor our enemies. We only know what our enemies tells us to believe about ourselves and what they tell us to believe about themselves. They keep telling us that everything about us are negative and everything about themselves are positive. It's a psychological warfare tactic that's being done to instill the myth of their racial superiority and a myth of our Black racial inferiority into our subconscious minds. It's a psychological warfare tactic that makes us more compliant with white dominance over our lives. White oppressive forces deploys many hidden nefarious tactics for continuing their ongoing subjugation of Black people. There are presently white men that specialize in psychiatry and propaganda that works unrelentingly behind the scenes, manipulating the collective minds of the Black masses. These men govern our minds, molds our opinions, and shapes our perceptions in ways that protects and serves the white society. It's the true reason why many Black people now perceives ourselves as being our own worst enemies and reveres Caucasians in spite of such a brutally horrific history of the contrary. It's the hidden truth that white oppressive forces don't want the Black masses to ever learn. These men also systematically feed disinformation into the Black communities that are designed to keep us distracted from learning the truth of our plight and condition. The truth that we must learn in order to develop the proper counter strategies that are necessary in order to truly liberate ourselves. This is why those of us who studied those tactics and those of us who knows the truth of our plight and condition, we must teach those of us who do not. Those that know must teach, African proverb. While we've been focusing on religions, white oppressive forces have instead been focusing on the psychology of the mind. And their research of the human mind has provided them with much more benefits than our focus on religion has provided us. No, I'm not an atheist. I merely know with absolute certainty that religions are not of God. The human brain is the world's greatest computer because it is self-aware, self-formulating, self-learning, and it can even reprogram itself. Why would God implant such great abilities into our head and then give us a religion that discourages intelligent critical thinking in exchange for blind dumb faith? The brain's capabilities are a direct contradiction of the limits that religion imposes upon it. We're supposed to be wise and insightful, not dumb and holy. Our ancient history proves this fact. We Africans are the true builders of the Africa's ancient kingdom of Egypt. All of Greece's first scholars were educated by Africans. Africans invented paper, writing, medicine, science. Africans brought Europe out of the Dark Ages. Our true spiritual system promoted intelligence. We Africans were not religious. We govern ourselves by rules and principles we call universal laws of conduct. In ancient Africa's Egypt and Nubia, they call these laws the 42 negative confession and or the 42 laws of Mott. These 42 laws were carved in granite stone many thousands of years, long before the Bible or the Quran were ever written. We Africans did not practice religions. Both Christianity and Islam were both brutally imposed upon our ancestors. Black Christians believe that being a Christian makes them righteous. And the black Muslims believe that being a Muslim means that their minds are more elevated than Christians. But both religions were in fact originally brutally beaten into submission into the blood-soaked minds of our ancestors. The original Christians and Muslim invaders castrated African men and raped African women. The Christian rapists called them bedwenches. The Muslim rapists called them concubines. If you believe that this is how a true ideology of God would be introduced to a people, you are a goddamn fool. For these are not the methods of how the true words of an infallible God would be introduced to a people. These facts totally disqualifies both religions from being truly of an infallible God. Both noted religions are falsehoods that mentally enslaves millions of Africans. If we remain stagnant within this place of profound ignorance, we will never liberate ourselves. Usually, people have the right to believe what they choose to believe, but it is a luxury that the oppressed doesn't have. There's a profound exception to this rule when it comes to the oppressed. When the beliefs held by the oppressed are falsehoods that hinders our liberation, those falsehoods must be exposed and eradicated. We must gain a clear and accurate understanding of our plight and condition. Because if our understandings are flawed, then all liberating remedies and strategies that stem from those misunderstandings will also be flawed. This is why those who know the truth must teach. Now, as I was originally saying, while we've been focusing on religions, white oppressive forces have instead been focusing on the psychology of the human mind. And their research has provided them with much more benefits than our focus on religion has provided us. True Black liberation began with learning the social sciences of prevailing narratives. Those who control the narratives that are fed into a society control the collective brain stems of the society. Because people function based upon the narratives that are repetitively fed into the society. And the narratives that are repetitively fed within the white dominant society are literally falsely scripted to convey and propagate the myth that whites are inherently superior to blacks. Doing so creates and sustains false assumptions within the society that aids the white society in maintaining its social dominance and social capital over black people. They fed so many lies into the society to meet that objective. Case, point, and proof. Although Caucasians share more physical characteristics with their Neanderthal ancestors of Europe than they presently do with me melanated Africans, they've totally separated themselves from the Neanderthals of Europe and falsely claimed themselves as being the highest evolved African Homo sapien. They attempt to explain away their different appearance from we Africans by making the claim that their skin turned pinkish white upon migrating to the colder climate of Europe, an alleged form of albinism. However, it's been scientifically proven that Caucasians are not African albinos, but instead inherit their skin color is a direct result of the Neanderthal DNA. The Neanderthals evolved as totally separate species from we African Homo sapiens. Africans are not even included on the Caucasians' Darwin evolutionary chart. Unlike Caucasians that evolved from lower primates, we Africans have always been Homo sapiens. Africans are the only true homogeneous species. The Caucasians falsely separate themselves from the Neanderthal ancestors of Europe and falsely attach themselves onto we African Homo sapiens in order to falsely give themselves a Homo sapien identity. The true scientific term for Caucasians is actually Homo sapiens sapiens. It means modern humans who evolved from lower primates. Google it. They're not of us. We are of man, they are of mankind. Here's another lie. Although Egypt is located in Africa, and although radiocarbon dating testings have scientifically proven that the ancient kingdom was built by Africans thousands of years, long before the arrival of the first Arabs and Europeans during the 7th century, the white society nonetheless claims that great African history as ridiculously belonging to Europeans. They do so although all scientific evidence proves that Africa's ancient Egyptians were accordingly Africans. The geographical location of Egypt is in Africa. Hair sample testings, melanin skin testings, bone density testings, and DNA analysis have all scientifically proven that the ancient Egyptians were in fact Africans. Their DNA match current day sub-Saharan Africans. The history we've been taught has been whitewashed to falsely exalt Caucasians and to falsely marginalize we Africans. The white society also give themselves credit for most inventions made by black people throughout history. This is why most people are unaware of the fact that in spite of cultural traumas wrought by the injustices of white racism and slavery, that most inventions that have revolutionized the world were in fact either invented by black people or were directly inspired by early inventions by black people. After slavery was abolished in the U.S. in 1865, between the years of 1870 and 1940, African Americans submitted 726 invention patents to the U.S. Patent Office. Those numbers more than doubled those submitted by whites during the same time frame. And in spite of the fact that Africans then only made up 3% of the American population. That's incredible. This scenario of black people outpacing whites in producing inventions has never stopped. It's merely concealed from the public through the white society's monopoly over information. The technological advancements made by black people is unrivaled by any other racial group. It's a narrative that is never fed into our society because it disputes the myth of white superiority. Now, I'm certain that my disclosure may sound shocking to many people. When a well-packaged web of lies has been sold gradually to the masses, the truth will seem absolutely ridiculous and the speaker will sound like a raving lunatic. That's because we've been believing lies. However, not because the majority of people believe things to be true does not make them true. It most often merely means that the majority of people have all received the same false information and never bothered to do their research to confirm if what they were being told was actually true. Present-day society is the most manipulated and misinformed in history by way of mass media and public education. Much of what we think we know as a society are lies. The white society sits upon a throne of white exalting and black marginalizing lies. They've made the greatness of we Africans appear as being theirs and have made their failures appear to have been as being ours. Through this process, the self-image and collective self-esteem of the white masses has been falsely bolstered at the expense of the self-image and collective self-esteem of the black masses. The nefarious practice is called Orwellian propaganda. Orwellian propaganda is an adjective that describes societal conditions created and controlled by propaganda, perpetuation of lies, denial of truth, and even the manipulation of the past to falsely exalt Caucasians and to falsely marginalize Africans. White historian justifies unethical practice by saying that it's customary for conquerors to distort facts and rewrite history to favor themselves. However, the true reason it's being done is much more directly self-serving of the white society. The first reason is because, according to white social scientists, in order for a dominant group to maintain its position of social dominance over its subordinate populations, that their narrative that are fed into society must endorse their position of social dominance. This means the narrative fed into society must exalt the dominant group. This exaltation of the dominant group conveys the message that a dominant group is inherently superior and are therefore supposed to rule over its subordinate population. This means that the narrative fed into society must always exalt the dominant group. Otherwise, it undermines their position of dominance. White social scientists describe this nefarious practice as merely instilling a value system into the collective minds of the black population that makes us adhere to the authority and existing infrastructure of the dominant society, dominant white society. The true history of Caucasians does not endorse their current position of social dominance, nor does it inspire their future. Therefore, to achieve this, they've whitewashed their history books. We see it, but most of us don't understand there's a social science why the history books have been whitewashed. We have to learn these science. The second reason why this whitewashing scheme is being done is because white social scientists also theorizes that a people's future is predestined by the history they're taught to believe about themselves. According to their theory, an inspiring history is required to achieve an inspiring future because people references their future capabilities based upon their past achievements. More specifically, people references those past positive information about a particular group to acquire a positive self-image and confidence that inspires their future. In a sense, the past can be treated essential as a set of conditions that justifies or encourage future goals. People then references their potential and their capabilities in relation to the history they've been taught to believe about their particular group. The true history of Caucasian does not inspire their future aspirations of their racial group. Therefore, the history we're taught has been intentionally whitewashed to meet that objective. It has been whitewashed to make the Caucasians appear more significant and more relevant throughout history than they truly were, thus inspiring their future aspiration of their racial group. According to white social scientists, truth is not important for steering a society towards an inspiring future or for elevating the self-esteem of a people. Perception is more important than truth because people function based on what they perceive to be true. What's only important is what's perceived as being true. This nefarious social science is what's meant when white social science says those who controls the past controls the future. The white society whitewashed the past to guarantee themselves a dominating future. They cannot sustain their position of dominant or inspire their people if their people know their true history. That's why everything's a lie. Brothers and sisters, it's time to elevate our minds above these silly things that we believe. We have to understand social science. Start studying social science if you want to liberate yourself. One love and peace.